Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, he loves humans more than apes. It's Matt Friedman. How's it going today, Matt?
That's a vicious lie. Everyone knows that I'm loyal to ape kind.
This week on the show, Deconstructing Apes continues with our 8th film in the franchise. We're talking this time about the oh gosh, I didn't write the year down here.
I'm guessing 14?
2014. Wow, good guess. The 2014 sequel to the 2013 reboot, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And Matt, we figured we were going to have a lot to say about this one, so it's all we plan to talk about today. It's all we're doing. It's just going to be Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I think we're going to have quite a bit to say.
Me too.
All right, let's get right into it and talk about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
We both have families. You want to protect yours. I want to protect mine. It's our only chance for peace.
Are you aware?
No!
They are going to turn on you.
They're animals!
Caesar, you're home.
Who was that?
A good man like you.
Caesar love humans more than apes.
If you threaten his family, he will retaliate.
Don't shoot!
Matt, what is this movie all about?
The fragile peace between apes and humans is threatened as mistrust and betrayal threaten to plunge both tribes into a war for dominance over the earth.
This movie was written by Mark Bombach, Rick Jaffa, and Amanda Silver. It was directed, of course, by Matt Reeves, his first of 2 ape films. It stars Andy Serkis, Jason Clarke, Gary Oldman, and Toby Kebbell as Koba. Matt, what did you think of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes?
Oh, this is such a good movie. It's just such a good movie. It's so delivers on the premise of what this franchise can be. It's just a delight. What do you think?
Yes, I fucking love this movie. This is the first time I've watched this movie in a long time. And I think we talked last week about like how kind of surprised and happy we were at how good Rise of the Planet of the Apes was. And I was like, why do I have these negative memories of this film? And it turns out the reason for that is just that Dawn of the Planet of the Apes laps Rise like so hard that it makes it look like a piece of shit by comparison. It's a good movie. It's just this movie is so much better. Like this, I'm going to be hyperbolic on this episode probably, but this rewatch has cemented this as probably one of my favorite films. I really, really loved this movie, and I think it's the best Apes film, and I don't think it's particularly close. Like I just absolutely fell in love with this movie on this rewatch. Like I was drawn in, I was on board, I was marveling at every aspect of it. There's only like one little thing about this movie I don't like. And we'll get into that in a bit. But man, like I just thought this was incredible. I think you're so right that it does everything. Like the thing with Battle of the Planet of the Apes, that movie was what I guess wanted in my memory was I wanted it to be this movie. And I think there are moments in that film that it is trying to be this movie. It's trying to have these profound conversations about like leadership and, you know, how you strive for peace while managing your own people that want violence and war. It's trying to do all these things, but this movie just does them better. And it does them better on all sides. Every one of these characters is like fantastically drawn. You're invested in them. You understand them. You understand their motivations, even the bad guys on both the ape side and the human side. And this movie like fucks with your emotions because there are so many moments that it allows you to see the potential of what like a happy coexistence between ape and human could be. Mm-hmm. And every one of those moments is punctuated by something going wrong, someone doing something stupid, some misunderstanding, something born of fear that just fucks it all up. And that's the movie as a whole. Like it happens in the micro, but that's the macro, is that this thing that could have been wonderful, could have been beautiful, could have lifted both species up is eventually destroyed for the dumbest possible reason, which is fear.
Yeah, I think
And
that's great. That's where you should find the pathos in this story, because otherwise it's just a battle, right?
yeah, yeah,
I like I'm always a sucker for a good prison break story. That's why the previous movie really works on me so well. But I just have to agree, this movie is so much deeper,
Mhm.
and more complex, and almost Shakespearean in sort of the
Yes,
premise.
yes, yeah,
It's this grand, mythic story, really. I guess sort of a timeless story. It's funny, as I was watching it, I was realizing that it was like retroactively making me like um Battle for the Planet of the Apes more,
yeah.
because and that was one thing so we're probably not going to talk about this a huge amount, but it was actually kind of gratifying and fun to realize that, like, oh, this is much like the previous movie was hitting on a lot of the beats of the original movies. This movie is also hitting on a lot of the beats of the original movies. It follows um a very similar structure. Like there's even some plot events that are sort of one-to-one substitutions, where it's like, instead of Caesar's son getting killed. In fact, I've never seen this movie before, I realized while watching it.
Wait, what? Wait, what?
So
What?
I'd only seen parts of it. Which is, you think you've seen a movie because you've seen parts of it, and you're like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
I've seen that movie because I remember parts of it, but I'd never seen it all the way through. So as I was watching it, I was like, oh, so Caesar's son is probably going to die, and that's really going to be sad. But instead of that, Caesar gets shot, and it's like, oh, it's the same plot beat, but it's swapped out. And then by keeping his son alive, I think, number one, I think it would have been like too sad if his son had died. And keeping him alive gives us the capacity for more exploration of that relationship. So I thought that was a good, smart change. Just okay. So to get back to what I was trying to say, like, it made me like that movie more, because I realized, like, oh, this is actually a really cool concept, where it's like
Yeah,
the dawn of a civilization, and you have this leader who is really just your almost ideal philosopher king.
yeah,
He's super wise and moral and good-hearted, and wants to believe in the best in everyone. And it's not even that he's naive. It's just he desperately wants things to work out, and so he keeps trying to make it work out. And I guess his only real mistake is not realizing that Koba is just not going to let this happen.
yeah.
And kind of how twisted he has become. But even Koba's character is like understandable, which is another strength of the movie. Koba, just overall, Koba as a character, love.
Yeah, no, I love Koba, and that's actually the one thing I don't like about this movie, is that I feel like we do this thing with Koba where when we round the bases to get to the third act, we transform Koba from this obviously angrier, nastier, less willing to trust humans than anyone else guy who just genuinely believes the best thing for his people is to wipe these people out. We turn him into just kind of a simple villain. Like,
Mhm.
once he crosses that line, he just has to be a bad guy. Now suddenly he's killing apes, he's picking up an ape. It's like the X-Men Magneto thing, where like Magneto is supposed to be like fighting on behalf of these mutant people, but then in that stupid third Last Stand movie, when he just calls them pawns, and you're just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, this is the whole reason you're doing this, is to help these people.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of what I felt like they did with Koba a little bit. Like, I'm actually even okay with the murder of Ash, because I think it's this profound moment. But then, like, at the end of the movie, he's just like mindlessly shooting other apes, and I'm just like, we didn't have to do this to make clear that he was the bad guy, and we were, and like Caesar's the good guy. Like, we got there, we understood it, and we understood his motivations, and that made us not empathize perhaps, but at least understand him as a character. So I didn't like how we had to like turn on the evil switch as soon as he crossed that line.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my favorite parts of the movie is really him being quite villainous, but in a way that feels like an understandable villainy, which is the best kind of villain, which is the scene where it's kind of a two-part scene, or a scene bridged across two scenes, you could say. The first time they catch him spying on the gun armory, and it's just I don't want to just do the thing where I describe the scene in detail, but the point of it is he totally outsmarts them by playing like he's the goofy monkey, and then this all culminates in him just murdering them in cold blood.
Yeah.
And you know it's coming the whole time. You know exactly what's going to happen, and it's kind of awesome. Like you're kind of like it's gonna be sweet when he murders these guys, because even though you're really on Caesar's side, you get where you do get where Koba's coming from. I don't know. I love everything about how that worked out, and I agree that it diminishes the movie a bit that he just kind of goes, mad with power at the end.
Yeah, but I still love him as a character. I mean, I love all, like the moment he shoots Caesar. Like even then, I think he's not gone too far into just arch villain territory. It's just like I believe that he believes that this is the best thing for his people. And the argument the movie is making at the end is that I think it's Caesar says it to him, like Koba says, Koba did this for Apes, and Caesar's response is Koba did this for Koba. Like he's doing this because he hates people. He was like basically the opposite of Caesar, where Caesar was born into this comforting home where he saw the good side of people. Koba only saw the bad side of people. Like I love that line where like Koba only learned hate from humans. He learned nothing else. There was nothing else they had to offer him. And like what I love about this also is like Koba is ultimately the bad guy, but he's like not entirely wrong either, right? Because yeah, if they did not allow them to come fix their dam, Gary Olson was going to come up there with guns and shoot them all. And like when they go spy on the humans, they are checking their arms stockpile to make sure that we can kill these people. I mean, like everyone on every side of this isn't necessarily wrong. They're just all being driven by fear and uncertainty.
Yeah.
And and it creates this like, this is the thing I love about this movie most, like the tension and the conflict of the situation is just like you stand back from it and you just go, oh, that's good. Like that's good. Like these are two civilizations, one of which is a new civilization that has just started to make its way in the world. The other is the last breath of a dying civilization, desperately trying to cling on to what they've lost. That's just ripe for conflict. And then you put them in this situation. And by the way, is there a hydroelectric dam across the Golden Gate Bridge into the wilderness? I don't know. Probably not. But who cares? Because it's the perfect setting for creating this conflict. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's real or not. It's just like, idea. We'll put one there so we make this conflict happen. And then you put these two leaders on each side that are desperately trying to get their peoples to avoid war and to get their peoples to work together. And the horrifying tragedy of the movie is that they just got so close, but they just can't make it work. They just can't. Like the ending of this movie where Caesar and Malcolm's character are just like standing there and they go like forehead to forehead, kind of giving each other a hug and saying like, we were so close. We were so close. And then Malcolm is forced to just like fade into the darkness. It's just like, fuck, man. I'm like, it does the Planet of the Apes, this is a depressing ending thing, like better than any movie except for perhaps the first one. It's just like this horrifying tragedy where you're happy that your characters made it through this conflict alive, but you're just sad. You're just sad at what could have been. And it's a bummer. It's such a bummer.
Yeah. I like how they structure all of the characters in ways that just feel very believable and human all around. Where like you pointed out, we've got on the one side Koba and on the other Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
But then you've got Malcolm and Caesar, and they represent like hope for collaboration, but also at the same time an understanding that like there are some elements in this group who see this as a winner-take-all game theory situation where we can't trust those guys. We don't know those guys, or even, there's a deeper level to it where it's like Caesar was raised by humans to see the good, like the best of humanity, and Koba was raised by humans to see the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
And I think in a deep way, neither of them is right.
Yeah.
Like Caesar's probably overestimates us. Koba probably underestimates us. But in either case, we're not trustworthy.
Mhm.
And then Gary Oldman was just sort of objectively right because Koba did
Yeah.
end up attacking, right? So
Yeah.
it's this it's just doomed and hopeless in a way that feels very beautifully tragic.
Yeah. I love that we pick up with this human survival like group like 10 years later,
Mhm.
and we don't actually get to see it. We just kind of feel from the characters what these past 10 years have been like to them, both with the fact that they've lost all their loved ones, but also with this idea that like civilization had collapsed.
Mhm.
There was chaos, there was destruction, there was monstrosity and acts of horror committed against each other. Like I think it's Malcolm's line that says, yeah, like his son has seen things that no kid should ever have to see. And so it's not just about survival, it's about them like grabbing hold of what it means to be a human again by getting this power on, getting these lights on is like this desperate attempt to push away the horror of the past 10 years and regain some semblance of life and civilization. And so it is this incredibly relatable thing. Like you understand when Gary Oldman makes the decision is like, look, if these people are not going to let us get to that dam, we're just going to have to take it. Like
Mhm.
we need power. We can't go back to the way it was before, and we're just going to have to do it. And like I love that this is the human bad guy, right? We have the ape bad guy and the human bad guy. This is the human bad guy. And what do we do with him? We even give the movie time. The first thing that happens when the power comes back on is we cut to this guy and he's holding up an iPad that has now power for the first time. And the first thing he does is looks at pictures of his kids because his kids are dead. And that's one of the things that's motivating him too, of like all these things that we've lost and have the opportunity to gain again. Even the simple thing of like, I can remember what my children look like that I've lost because these are the only place these pictures are.
Yeah.
It's so well done. It's like that the movie takes the time to understand that we need to understand every single one of these characters is so good. Like it's so good, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because my only complaint about the movie is that it's 2 hours and 10 minutes long,
Yeah.
which is like my most weakly held complaint because, like you just said, there's all these great moments, like Gary Oldman looking at his iPad and crying, or like the power coming on, and everyone comes to the the 76 gas station and having a little impromptu party, which is like it's for mood, it's for what you just said, like deepening this sense of God, we've been through hell,
Yeah.
and this actually, you can feel the gravity of getting the power back and how this is an amazingly hopeful moment, and if you just sped through that, you would lose something, right?
Yeah.
So this is a funny thing about Matt Reeves, actually, is Matt Reeves, the Batman, which is a movie that I also like a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Is a 176-minute movie, and I'm just like, I'm just so torn because part of me is like, my God, can we just please make movies that a person that a human can watch, actually, but then on the other hand, that movie and this movie are movies that I just love, so I suppose I will have to just grapple with that in my heart.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I agree with you. This is the longest Apes film by a mile. Even Rise of the Planet of the Apes was a rather normal, like 100 minutes. I think it was literally like an hour and 40 minutes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like half an hour beyond that, and that's long. It is long. It's almost too long, but I do think this is one of those movies that justifies its length for sure. Like it doesn't feel like we're stretching things out. It feels like every scene has purpose and direction, and it matters, and it's moving us towards something. It really just it didn't feel long to me while I was watching it, except for the fact that I was like having to sneak this at work like between meetings, and I was like, oh God, there's still 50 minutes left in this thing. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
So
so the the battle part was interesting to me because it was actually great and horrible, and it was almost like too effective was what I thought. If that makes any sense. Like when you've got the chimps attacking and they're all being gunned down, I was like, this is just too awful. Like this isn't this isn't fun action. This
Yeah.
is
Well,
terribly tragic.
that's because it's the failure mode. Like this is not
Mhm.
the way. Yeah, the way Reeves films this is it's not supposed to be fun action. Like you're
Yeah.
never supposed to feel good about any of what's happening here.
Yeah.
And he does that incredibly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I don't know what else to say about that. Just like uh uh kind of part of me wants to just enjoy and like part of me wants to have fun watching these movies, but they're actually all tragedies.
Yeah,
Like 100% of the Planet of the Apes movies
they
are
are.
tragedies.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I still feel that way, but I think it's because this movie does have a lot of fun in it, maybe. And like there's a lot of fun to the sci-fi idea, just the sci-fi premise of this species being uplifted and trying to build their own society. Like some of my favorite parts of the movie are before the humans even really are in the story, just like this. Let's look at their little society they built. They've constructed a kind of little town for themselves, but also like they evidently are still they're clearly still anatomically chimps and orangutans and so on. So they don't really need shelter in the way that humans need shelter, but they've built themselves sort of a house in the way that you imagine that an ape would think. Like, yeah, that's a cool house, that, they're the school where they're learning their letters and everything. The way they use language was one thing I thought was really fun and just continuously delightful for me. The fact that most of the time it's this form of sign language that's being interpreted via the subtitles,
Loosely interpreted via the subtitles, by the way. Like,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think I kind of got the sense that it's like they communicate via sort of subtext and shorthand in a way where it's not literally, but also like, yeah, they're all smart. They're all smart the way Caesar is smart, more or less.
Yeah.
So although there's kind of a asterisk there, by the way, that like maybe Caesar is still actually smarter than almost all these people, because Caesar was the only one of the first generation who actually had the virus from birth or from the womb, whereas the others, including Koba, were infected with it later, or maybe even got it secondhand. We don't really know, and that's not, the movie doesn't make a big deal of that, but it was something I was kind of thinking about in the background of like, is there some implication maybe that the apes that got different doses or had the virus for a different length of time have less intelligence? And it doesn't really matter, actually. I just was thinking it's kind of an interesting thing you can play
I think
with.
that's a sound theory. I think definitely Caesar is still superior to all of them. But man, and like I know we talked glowingly about Andy Serkis in the last film, and like we should have saved some of it for this one.
Yeah,
because just again, like the presence. So first of all, like the CG work here is again incredible, and it's hard to believe that this was 10 years ago now. But like the presence these apes have and the way Matt Reeves shoots the scenes that have apes in them, like there's so many moments where it's just like, hey, humans, here's this you're surrounded by apes, and we've managed to absolutely wonderfully convey the power and awe and also terror of this feeling. Like I love the scene where they first see them in the forest and just surround them. The scene where all the apes ride out to San Francisco and just show up in front of the town. It's just Caesar in full war paint regalia, just like being this badass. Like he's just like, he's so regal. Like it's clear that he's the one in charge. Like everyone can see it. It's so well done by both Circus and the animators for the apes. It's all incredible. You totally feel it. It's the menace and but like that's a moment where you like you're not like, I don't think I'm nervous in the moment when Caesar rides out to show the humans the strength of the ape force, because like that's a moment of just like Caesar's doing the right thing. He's like saying, we have to show strength. We have to show them that we're strong and willing to fight, but we're also going to attempt to manage this situation. Like human home here, ape home there. Don't come back. Like I think it's really, really effective.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I mean, that I think interestingly pings off the idea of how the movie uses the ape speech, because the apes seem to talk more and more after they run into the humans. I think because
Yeah.
the humans are talking so much, and it's like you see Caesar in particular go from almost never speaking. It's almost like at the beginning of the movie, you almost get this sense that he maybe has forgotten how to, because it's been
Mhm.
so long. Um, and then doing it more and more, and also Koba speaking more and more,
Yeah.
until by the end of the movie they're basically having these shouted arguments, which I think works. It works within the movie, and also it's kind of the movie is serving as this bridge in this timeline, between this idea of these are just chimpanzees to this is going to be an elevated civilization of talking apes, which
Mhm.
we know we're going there. So it just I love how the movie kind of plays that, doles that out to us slowly.
Yeah, I agree. It's like they're all still kind of learning how to
Mhm.
talk.
Mhm.
And yeah, they don't really do it that often, but there are moments where it feels like, and this is one of those things that's like, is this a choice like for the world building, or is it just a choice to nail certain lines of dialogue that they'll be having a sign language conversation and he'll switch to speech? Like, I don't care either way. I think there is a through line of like, they definitely start speaking more. Like the first time we hear Caesar speak in this movie is when he's speaking to the humans, right? The
Mm.
entire like 15-minute sequence where we just get to see the apes living by themselves in harmony, no one's talking at all.
Mhm.
They're all doing their sign language, nonverbal communication thing, and yet it isn't until he first says "go" to them,
Mhm.
and that's such a great moment because like that's the thing about Caesar, Matt. I know he's Andy Serkis, and I know the dialogue is Andy Serkis, but I don't know what Serkis is doing with his mouth here, or
Mhm.
his voice rather, because it doesn't sound like recognizably Andy Serkis to me.
Mhm.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
you
think
disagree with that.
I know what you mean. Both him and Koba are doing this thing. I'm going to keep calling him Koba because I don't actually really know the actor. Um, where whenever they speak, it's either this very, very low, throaty growl that almost sounds physically painful,
Hmm.
or like borderline a whisper, or they're like screaming, because apes don't really have a larynx. so
Yeah.
like they're either just kind of squeezing the air out to make a whisper, or they're doing the equivalent of their like chimp scream that you hear, except they're shaping it with their mouth.
Hmm.
you know the philosophers can debate whether that's physically possible. I don't really care. The
Who
point
cares?
is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's supposed to emphasize that like their bodies are not really supposed to be doing this, but they're forcing it out one way or the other, and it makes
Hmm.
their voices sound very inhuman. Actually, like I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean. And those two do the most talking, and they always sound like profoundly inhuman. And you're so it helps you buy, like, yeah, that's what a chimpanzee would sound like if it could talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other really clever things I think the movie does is, speaking of the one asshole character, I think his name is Carver, the one
Mhm.
that like causes all the trouble by refusing to get rid of his gun.
Uh-huh.
There's really like, you watch like the first 5 minutes of this movie are basically like a recap of the very end of the last movie, right? Where we see the flu expand globally and slowly kill humanity. But they named it the simian flu. And I thought that was such a clever choice for the movie to do, because now not only do you have this disagreement between two scared peoples over resources essentially, but you've given the apes a reason to mistrust humans because of the past dealings with them. But by calling it the simian flu, now you have humans going, what humans would naturally do is go like, oh, it's the ape flu,
Mhm.
it's their fault.
Mhm.
Like they did this, it's their fault that this happened to us, and so we naturally hate these apes because of this. Such a clever thing. And despite the fact that you have Kerry Russell's character being like, no, this virus was made in a lab, it's 100% our fault, it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, this reminds me so much of COVID times when, you know, Trump and some other people were like calling it the China flu, and there were all these people out there being like, no, you can't do that, because then like what will happen is exactly what will happen, which is like you'll start blaming Chinese people for this flu, which is ridiculous. Like, it's not a random Chinese American person's fault that we have COVID. But this is like exactly what happened with the idea of the simian flu. And now these apes that had nothing to do with the release and infection and murder of humanity are being blamed for it by some of the more scared people in the populace.
It was weirdly, you know, prescient when, like you said, she says this was made in a lab, and he almost says like, I don't believe in that science shit. Like, I don't remember what he says exactly, but it's exactly the sort of stuff that happened where it just became like, no, it makes me feel better to believe to have somebody to be mad at. And
no, I think he specifically, she says to him, you can't blame them, and his response is, well, who else am I going to blame? And it's like, that's just perfect people logic. Like, just perfect. I need someone to blame. I can't blame the scientists that made this thing. So why not these foreign looking creatures in front of me that I say, quote, like, doesn't it just disgust you to look at them? Which is what he says. Like, this is perfect. This is perfectly drawn and crafted to create maximal conflict. Like, you believe why all the conflict lines break as they do, because the movie takes all the time in the world to set up all these characters and all these lines of conflict. It's just wonderful.
Even though that guy sucks a lot, actually, just like there's so many great scenes where it's a small group of humans just kind of walking into the woods looking for a dam, and then 300 giant chimpanzees come roaring down the mountain and then yell at them in English. I love that part so much.
It is such a perfect like character defining moment where we have him, Carver, like freaking the fuck out about it, which is completely rational, and then you have Jason Clarke's Malcolm character who's just like, it was incredible. It's like the perfect, this is the line that's going to be drawn here is some people are terrified of it, and some people like Jason Clarke are like, I need to know more. I need to understand this. I need to, these people fascinate me.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. I mean, you're totally right. Like the first act that a human does in the movie is shoot an ape. And it's an aggressive act that kind of starts off our whole interaction between these two tribes on a bad foot. But like, I don't necessarily like blame him. Like, as you said, you're walking through the woods and two giant chimpanzees, because let's be clear again what you said last week, they just made them bigger, and like more, like, it's not that chimps aren't like kind of terrifying on their own, we've talked about this a lot, but they just like sized up the chimps. Like, they're just bigger than chimpanzees are, so they're like bigger and like completely bipedal, and they're just walking towards you. I think I might also shoot one in that moment, right? Like, I think that's a perfectly rational thing. And I like that the movie, as much as it wants to build up Carver as this asshole that like potentially caused some of these conflict lines, he does genuinely like feel bad about shooting Ash. Like there's that moment where like he's kind of saying it over and over again. I shot him. I shot him. I didn't mean, I shot. Like, it's definitely emotionally affecting him. And the problem is, instead of like stepping back and realizing that you were being driven by fear here and you shouldn't have been, like, he kind of ends up just doubling down on that. But again, another line of like, oh, I relate to this person, or I understand this person. It's everything's so good here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun to hate that character for sure, but also he is human. He's not. Once again, nobody in the movie is a cartoon. He seems like somebody who has just been broken by the horror of this pandemic that everyone's lived through, and now he's just kind of barely keeping it together. And he's a survivor. So the idea that he's going to smuggle the shotgun in that they then find in the moment, you're like, you idiot. But also, can you imagine being surrounded by giant monster apes and not having any kind of weapon? Like it's a relatable impulse, It,
Yeah, and like he didn't smuggle the weapon in because he was gonna like assassinate an ape when given an opportunity. He was just scared,
yeah,
and it provided him some semblance of protection
yeah,
in his mind. And that is like so much of this movie is just driven by fear. These peoples are just afraid of each other, and they don't know how to trust or learn to trust or learn to coexist. And they get so close and yet just not there. I love this fucking movie,
yeah.
dude. I love it all. I even like even Caesar's son gets like his own little arc, right?
Yeah.
Like they take the time to do that. Like we establish Blue Eyes in like one of the very first scenes on this hunt, that he's kind of attacked by a bear and scarred, and so like he has this kind of he's carrying some stuff with him, right? Because that's seen as kind of an embarrassment, right? Like
Mhm.
he's on the hunt. The movie doesn't even specifically say this, but like I don't think it's like his first hunt. But he's young and he's on the hunt and he's eager to prove himself, and he has to live in the shadow of his father, the most fucking badass ape that's ever lived. And the encounter ends with him getting sliced up by a bear and having to be saved by his dad and Koba. And so he's got a chip on his shoulder, and it allows him to get himself into the situation where he's like so eager to prove himself and show that he's strong, that he's kind of hoodwinked by Koba and led down that path.
Mhm.
And we get to see him recognize that. We get to see him repent and reconnect with his father. Like it's all there, and it's all very, very good. All of it.
Yeah. You reminded me of something. Another thing I'm glad about is that in the beginning of the movie, Koba is truly Caesar's loyal lieutenant. Like
Yes.
he loves Caesar. He loves Caesar's son. He saves them. He saves them from the bear. Like he risks his life to save them from the bear.
Yeah.
He's not Scar waiting for his chance to throw Mufasa off the cliff, even though he does have the scar. It's a genuine disagreement about like this future safety of the tribe that comes between them. It's not just that he is the schemer, and I think that's really important and really improves things.
Yeah, I mean, there's that one moment early in the movie where Caesar does the kind of like submission gesture, right? And Koba, instead of like just doing the gesture, they like take each other in their arms, right? They like link arms in this bond of friendship. So it's not even like master and like leader and follower, which that's what the relationship is. But we're establishing it's much closer than that. It's general and first lieutenant. It's best friends. It's like loyal soldiers and cooperators. Like these are two very close people, and Koba is someone that he trusts implicitly. And then that it is really a great moment where we establish that, where we do the submissive gesture, and it ends in this essentially handshake. And then the second time we do it, after they've had the fight in the dam, it's just the classic like just like thing. And shows that just a perfect way of visually showing how the entire relationship has deteriorated that quickly.
I think there might even be 3 where
you might be right,
because I think the second one, Caesar, like he's yelling at Caesar. Yeah. So the second one is when he's going, Caesar says we're going to let the humans do their work. This is another one of those moments that gives me chills. We got to let the humans do their work. And Koba goes, human work. And he starts pointing at his horrible scars and his eye, human work. And then Caesar like stands up and makes himself really big and scary. And then Koba realizes he's gone too far. But it's like, this is Koba's genuinely upset, and Caesar's like, okay, I gotta tamp this down, but this is still my loyal Koba. And they do the submission gesture. And then the third beat, is in the dam when they have the actual fight. And in that one, I'm like 99% sure that when Caesar, returns the gesture by putting his hand down, Koba pulls his hand away before Caesar actually touches him.
Oh, I thought it was like really fast, but I didn't see if it was like before they actually touched. That's great.
I'm not 100% whether, because it's so quick, right? You can't really tell, but it's like it's a disingenuous gesture of submission, right? It's like I'm not really submitting. I'm gonna go immediately betray you because we're not friends anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good, man. It's so good. And they're like, God, the way Reeves shoots Caesar. I know we said this already. I just want to reiterate because the dam scene made me think about that when Koba comes charging into the dam saying, like, where's Caesar? Where's Caesar? And then we cut to like Caesar in the background walking into the room. And just like the way Reeves shoots the scene is like filled with like this incredible gravitas of this like the king like walking into the room and just being like, what? Like it's just like everything in this movie is working together. I fucking love this movie, man. I can't get over how good this is. I knew it was going to be good and I was ready to like it, but yeah, this just blew me away. Every part of it. Matt Reeves is such a good director, man. He's so good at this. Like every part of the scenes, how he manages the interplay between the characters and the scenes. Right now I'm thinking of Malcolm's moment to stand up to the humans where he like is watching them set up the C4 and then just like slowly walks over to his buddy and takes the gun from him and just like slowly before they even realize what's going on and then like slowly raises it and is like, sorry, I can't. Like that's just great directing too. How you set up the pace of that scene, you kind of slow roll it to ratchet the tension.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. It's so I said I wouldn't overdo this, but I thought it was great, that Gary Oldman blows up the C4 in a way that felt to me like reminiscent of Charlton Heston, pushing the button and blowing up the world.
Yeah.
Which is not literally what he did there, but I think in a symbolic sense, it's like he is so broken and full of, basically has so little faith that any peace is possible that he would rather just blow everything up, literally killing himself, than risk trusting the apes. So I do think they are looking at those old movies and looking for places where they can make connections. I'm very, very sure of that.
Yeah, I think they are. The thing, we talked in and we kind of rolled our eyes at some of them in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I think there's no like awkward shoehorn direct connections. Like, for example, Draco Malfoy saying, get your damn hands off me. And like the cute little Statue of Liberty, like things hidden here and there. I didn't see any of that in this movie. There's definitely like, it feels to me more they're just pinging off like some of the story elements and character elements and thematic beats of the original movies.
Yeah.
Without doing the specific Easter egg references, member berries moments, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, it's like stuff like he drops Koba at the end of their fight. It's like, yeah, that's what happens in the other movie. But it's not a reference. That's just literally that's the plot. So,
yeah, I mean, we talked about in our conversation around Battle about the ape does not kill ape philosophy, and like I think you had made the argument then that that's kind of a naive philosophy to have, right? And that's essentially the plot of this movie is Caesar coming to realize that that's the naive philosophy to have, that and yeah, I guess he gets away with it on a technicality by saying you are not ape, which is like, okay, you're not allowed to kill ape, but also I can redefine what counts as ape or not. I don't think that's the intent of the scene. I think the intent of the scene is the earlier moment where Caesar talks to Malcolm about this idea of like, I trusted him more than I trusted you because he was an ape. And so because I so desperately wanted to believe that we're better than you, and this realization that we're not, and this realization that we're not unique in the flaws of our people that humanity has, and perhaps this idea of ape shall not kill ape is ultimately naive, that sometimes there are apes that we cannot allow to live, that we
Mhm.
that have to be stamped out for the good of everyone, which is like a depressing, perhaps accurate philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Like this the sad truth of the world. I mean, I think ultimately like, the sad truth of the world in this movie is that like this was always destined to fall apart.
Mhm.
Like it was never going to work. Like this is, we talk about things like world peace and like the end of conflict between peoples, and it's like you just look at things like this and you're like, even if they had survived through this initial round, like things would have eventually happened.
Yeah.
Like there's like okay, so like let's fast forward 20 years, right?
Mhm.
They've got the power successfully back on. They're repopulating San Francisco. Is humanity just going to like stay there? No.
Right.
They're going to start encroaching upon ape land, and vice versa as the ape community expands and grows and they push out. Like conflict is inevitable. I
Yeah.
think this movie argues.
Yeah, but whenever there's, a line that you can draw between groups, I think that's something. So just to remind you, I haven't seen the next movie either.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know what we're going to do with that exactly, but I'm interested to see whether they explore the theme from the older movies of the caste system within the ape society, where in this movie, that's not really, other than the fact that the orangutan is, the one at the chalkboard, which I think is almost more of a fun nod than it is
Mhm.
a uh, uh, true statement about like the apes have developed the caste system. It's like, no, that's Maurice.
Mhm.
He's just teaching.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see about that, because again, it's like we call it ape society, but well, we have chimpanzees, orangutans, and gorillas, which are dispositionally different, totally different species, might have different inclinations, and I'm excited to see whether or not these next movies, these final two movies, I guess, that we're going to cover, explore that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely only seen War the one time when I saw it
Hmm.
in theaters, and I haven't seen Kingdom at all. So, I have no idea what to expect for the final one, and I remember War very vaguely.
Hmm.
So can't tell you. Can't
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to revise one of my wild, not guesses, because I don't actually think this is going to happen. It was more like we were talking about how you would do uh, the sort of remake thing to do the mutants,
Hmm.
the subterranean human mutants, and I realized I sort of missed an obvious, very obvious possibility, which is just like, okay, so you've got some fraction of humans who are immune to the virus, and they sort of devolve over time. But what if there were some other fraction of humans for which the virus just worked as it was intended, which is literally as an intelligence amplification
Oh, that's
uh,
fun. Yeah.
drug, and that their underground society is advanced, and maybe they even have psychic powers, and it's because like the virus did what it was supposed to do, and maybe their population is low because it causes them problems, but it still
Hmm.
enhances their intelligence, or it directly mutates them. It causes them to be physically deformed, but enhances their intelligence. Like I wanted to bring that up because I was thinking about what we said last time, and I was like, oh, it's already there. You don't even have to add anything. You just
Yeah.
take that implication of the virus, because this is all based on the virus.
That's really fun. I guess I can say definitively that does not happen in the next movie. Spoilers, I guess. But maybe Kingdom. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not. It's not exactly that I wanted to see it happen. It's just it was kind of a fun exercise to imagine how you would. I think that the point of that exercise specifically was that we were saying, you don't just remake these to remake them. You remake them to say something about the present day and what are
Yeah.
our concerns and what themes do we want to address. And
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and again, I think it is interesting that one of the through lines of this series in particular is not this idea of like that humanity is in inevitably bad and destructive, but here's a society that can be better. It almost immediately goes to no, people are just bad and good, and also apes are just
uh
bad and good. Like that, like there's no one solid through line in any of this. It's like some people are bad, some people are good. Some apes are bad, some apes are good. There's no idea of like, oh, maybe there is this better utopia that exists out there in the world, or a group of people that can do it better and go beyond our ability and our faults. No, it's like it's a much more it's a much more 21st century understanding of who we are as people, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's the 70s, the 60s and the 70s was this time of like, oh, we suck actually. And I think it's not that we don't think we suck today. It's just I think we have a slightly more nuanced take on that. Is like many of us suck actually, but
Yeah.
many of us don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Humanity is not in and of itself broken and evil and destructive because yeah, I mean, like the big thing is like in the 70s we were just kind of waiting for a nuke to go off and the world to end. Like we
Right.
were just kind of waiting for that to happen, and it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Like we not, I mean, it's famous last words when a nuke goes off tomorrow, but
Right.
like we have slowed nuclear proliferation. The Cold War ended. Many of these nukes have been dismantled. There's not like the threat of nuclear war globally at every moment. I do realize the irony of me saying this like the week that Iran attacked Israel, and we're
Uh-huh.
like, who the fuck knows what's
Yeah.
gonna happen?
And
But
Iran directly bombed a Russian base, by the way. So
oh, they did?
yeah.
Cool.
Uh-huh. Anyway, but
The point
yeah.
that I'm trying to make here is we survived that possible end of the world scenario, and so we're now looking 40 years beyond that and being like, okay, what are the problems of today? And the problems of today, not that we don't have problems, the problems of today, and I don't think more nuanced is the right phrase. They're not more nuanced. It's just like the big global threats are not as simple as big bomb go boom, human made weapon that kills us all.
Right. I think we're less worried about extinction and more worried about just like everything being shitty forever.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what, like, I think, you know, this movie, by having the humans still be, well, yeah, the old movie did this too, but it's like, yeah, the humans are still around. They're struggling in a world that's falling apart around their ears. And that's kind of how we all feel sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like we kind of all feel sometimes like the world is falling apart around our ears. And so that's a relatable, you know, motif. I think I know we've mentioned some of these things before, but like it's a very interesting thematic motif that happens a lot in science fiction and fantasy too, that I just think is really interesting. And I just think it's really interesting how strongly this idea speaks to us of like a falling people and a rising people, where you've got like the elves versus men of Middle Earth. You've got the Martians and the arriving humans of the Martian Chronicles. You got the apes versus the humans and the apes of Planet of the Apes. There's probably countless other science fiction examples you could think of like a civilization in decline versus some other, you know, upcoming civilization. It just seems to be, I mean, it's also probably got like literal all kinds of historical reference.
Sure.
As well. It's just sort of one of these timeless stories that we love returning to. Which I think is a really compelling type of story too.
Totally. I think it is really compelling. I love this. And that's like the part of my favorite part of this conflict between these two peoples is that general idea that one is just setting out in the world, just defining their place, and doesn't want, in these early moments of the founding of their civilization, to be forced back to something. Whereas this other society is desperately clinging on to what they've lost and are desperate to hold on to it no matter what. And so it's desperation but on different sides of the coin. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, me too.
Did you know Judy Greer played Caesar's wife in this?
I saw that in the Wikipedia, and I was so confused that I didn't even mention it because I was like, but she doesn't
She's
say anything. I guess
she doesn't say
she
anything.
does the mocap, I guess.
Yeah, I guess she does the mocap, but like that character is so barely in this movie.
Mhm.
Now I think she is does play a slightly larger role in the next film, so like maybe it was just like a multi-picture deal of like you come and do this one, you're not going to have a too big of a role, but we'll give you a little more to do in the next one.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's
Maybe.
very funny. I was just so surprised to see that Judy Greer. Wow.
I just whenever I think about that character, I think about the analog of that character in the older movies and the scene where they bring Caesar into the, mating part of the building, and he gives that look where he's like, "Oh, okay, if I must."
Yeah. No, totally.
There's no equivalent of that in these
No.
movies.
No, I mean, I don't think. Do we even meet this character in Rise? I can't
I
remember.
don't think so. No, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure no.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you wanted to say about this movie? Like, well, let's just reiterate once again. It's great. Maybe we could briefly talk about Matt Reeves more broadly, because I
Sure.
do think he does this thing where like his movies are hard to watch. Like,
Mhm.
and I mean that like they're all really good. Like I really like this movie. I really do enjoy the next movie. And we both are big fans of the Batman. But these movies are, as you kind of said about the action in this movie, like oppressively dour. And I do think that fits Apes broadly. Like this is kind of what these movies are. But it is certainly different. Like I think the tone of this movie is so different from Rise.
Mhm.
That it really sticks out to me as being like specifically a Matt Reeves thing.
Mhm. Yeah, I think he just has really excellent control over the tone. Like that,
Yeah.
a kind of inverse way of saying this is that the tone of the previous movie didn't quite know exactly how it wanted to feel. I think like sometimes it's a rousing prison break, sometimes it's more of like a science fiction story. It's a little there's some things that you would change, whereas this one it's just eyes totally on the ball of what tone we're going for and
Yeah.
what the narrative through line is at every moment. And he's just really solid. Like I think another thing about Matt Reeves, to overgeneralize from two data points, is that he likes making long movies so that he can really go into all these arcs for all these side characters and have everything really flesh out and culminate and feel earned. And then culminate in some great climactic action beat at the end where,
Yeah.
and make that all land for you.
Yeah. Just to remind people, he also did direct the Cloverfield film, the first
Mhm.
Cloverfield, the I guess quote unquote found footage movie.
Mhm.
I just like the Cloverfield series is a mixed bag. I do actually really like the original Cloverfield. I think it's incredibly well done. It's well written. It's well directed, because you have to do this thing with this movie where you have to like intentionally make things shot not well, but also well enough to be clear and observable by people.
Mhm.
I just think it's very, very good movie. Also very dour and depressing, actually. The ending of that movie is not a positive one, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like we were in college when that came out. Maybe
We were, yeah.
that might have been a movie we saw together. But yeah, overall, it's a horror movie where there's not a lot of bright spots. Just a lot of horrible shit happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that movie though. I agree.
Yeah. And he does War for the Planet of the Apes as well. He does the Batman, and I guess we're gonna have Batman 2 coming in a couple years. Pretty excited about that. Excited about this guy. I want to continue to see what he does. I feel like he works well in these kind of big budget blockbuster films. He works well in the space. He's able to like carve out his niche in it and make what feels like a specific Matt Reeves film.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know if it's like a coincidence or it's just like the types of movies he takes, but it strikes me that most of the films that he's done, or maybe all of them, have just been very, very well written.
Mhm.
And he's not, I guess he does have a writing credit on War. He doesn't have a writing credit on Dawn, and he does have a writing credit on Batman. So he's involved in the writing of these films, but he's not like the auteur, writer, director, filmmaker. So I think he perhaps just has an eye for character and can recognize a good screenplay and can take that and execute on it very, very well in his films.
Yeah, it's interesting to note also that he basically started out as a writer, or at least let me rephrase: a movie was made from a script he wrote before he was a director, although he was a director pretty soon after that. So,
yeah, and he was he was in TV for a long time, the television show Felicity. He made that with J.J. Abrams. That was a Matt Reeves, J.J. Abrams co-pro thing. Like they made that series together, and he directed a few of the episodes and wrote quite a few of the episodes, but he is a creator of Felicity. So that's probably why we got Kerry Russell to appear in this movie, who, by the way, she has a very small role in this film. But I really like her role in this film. This is, again, like, these are the things this movie does that I think elevates it, in that we have this character Kerry Russell plays, that she serves a purpose in the movie, in that, like, she's the doctor character that is, helps bond the two groups by helping Caesar's wife. By then, when Caesar gets shot, she's the one that operates on him. She serves a role, but like her backstory is essentially superfluous to the movie, but yet we still get the time to understand her backstory. Like, this is a woman, and that helps us understand the state of humanity and kind of, again, define the conflict lines even better, because this is a woman who lost a daughter, is now with this man that is not her husband, right? Because he wasn't her husband, wasn't the father of her daughter, I guess we'll say. Because he lost his wife. And so this is kind of how these relationships in this new world are defined, of these people come together after both losing all the people in their lives and staking out this new life together. And we see, like, her struggle is trying to get closer and closer to the man she loves' son, who is he himself still suffering from the loss of his mother. And like this kind of dynamic we see a lot in storytelling of like the step parent, I guess, trying to bond with the child, but it's in this hyper like conflict driven, depressing, trauma ridden situation. And like we take the time to establish that and define that, and we get a conversation between her and the son. Like he says, we get that scene, that beautiful scene where he says to her, "Is like, I didn't know you had a daughter." And he feels, perhaps, like, again, we don't see this. We don't see that, like, the kid has perhaps been standoffish from her, and perhaps, like, not really embrace her as his father's partner because he's missing his mother. But like we see that in the edges of the film. And then so we have this mini arc between them where he learns that she lost a daughter, and he kind of lets his guard down around her just a little bit. Like he says to her, "I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I'm so sorry." And her response is, "Yeah, now I have you and your father." And it's like, oh, that's a great fucking moment, actually. And it wasn't needed. It wasn't key to the plot, but it's just character building. And I love it.
Yeah. There's so much great stuff with them. I mean, the son is also, but both her and the son are characters that are really characters that you could have written much less deeply, and yet they get these great scenes like the one you just mentioned, or the one where the son is reading to the orangutan.
Ugh.
Like, that's not necessary to the plot. That's just an incredibly, it's just again, like we, to emphasize just one more time that the movie functions by making you really sad about what could have been.
Yeah.
Just, I guess the last thing I would say is, it's kind of amazing. I don't have an encyclopedic understanding of budgets, but it's kind of amazing to me that this movie only cost 170 million. Like, it just feels incredibly, like, since we now have movies that cost like $1 billion to make, the fact that this movie cost 170 million, it's like that. This movie looks amazing. It's a giant movie. It's got so many different set pieces to it. And then on $170 million budget, it made $700 million. So
yeah,
Matt Reeves knows how to make movies.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was laughing because like I feel like the 2020s have just broken your brain.
They have.
Because like
They have.
$170 million is a lot of money. That's a lot of money to
Just
spend on one movie.
A cheap little flick.
That's a huge budget. But no, you're right. I mean, compared to like the every Marvel movie starts at 250.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. So, but setting aside the fact that I guess that is an objectively large amount of money, he still made a decent multiple on that at the box office.
This movie made a lot of money. Yeah. And I believe War also did well. Unfortunately, Kingdom, the most recent one, suffered from modern box office woes.
Yeah. the fact that movies are over.
Yeah. Let's see how much that. I'm actually curious how much Kingdom cost. So Kingdom actually cost less. It was 160 million. So they spent less money on that than they did on this one. Its worldwide gross was just under 400 million. So I mean, it probably turned a profit. Actually,
yeah, they're not wiping their tears, or they're wiping their tears with hundreds, I think.
Yeah,
and I mean, it's funny because Matt Reeves, jumped ship from the Apes franchise and made the Batman, which is another movie that cost around 200 million and then made back a multiple of that. So he's $200 million for a superhero movie. That is dirt cheap.
Yeah, I do want to say, like, he didn't necessarily jump ship from the franchise. Like, the trilogy ends with War for the Planet of the Apes.
Okay,
that is the end of that story. And then like 7 years later, they decided to pick this up again and make a new movie. So
gotcha.
I think it's less like he didn't want to do this anymore and more like this was their plan. Although arguably, like, if War made money, they probably would have made more. And so maybe he just did say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Wes Ball is the guy that directed Kingdom. So I'm interested to see. That's the guy that did like the Maze Runner movies. I don't know if you ever saw any of those.
Nope.
I think they're actually kind of good, shockingly, surprisingly. So I'm curious about. He also directed. Have we ever talked about Ruin? Oh wait, that's a different Ruin. Sorry, I thought it was Ruin, like the horror movie Ruin, but no, this is a killer drone movie. Never mind.
No.
The point is, I liked those Maze Runner movies, and I'm curious to see how he does with Apes. But we've got another movie to get to before we get there.
Yeah. All right.
And that's, I believe, is this a true statement? No, I think we're going to take a break from Apes next week. I think next week we're going to be talking about Inside Out 2, because we finally saw that movie. Or should I say I finally saw that movie, and I thought we should cover that because it was the highest grossing animated film of all time.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so that's next week is Inside Out 2. So we'll get back to Apes with War the week after that. But I think, Matt, that's all we had for people this week, right? You didn't have anything else, did you?
No, I'm all aped up for now.
All right. If you have any opinions on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes or any of the Apes franchise and want to reach out to us, you can find us on email at doofmedia@gmail.com, on X @doofmedia, or over on our subreddit r/doofmedia.
And if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you'll never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, please consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge at any of the available levels over there. There is a poll out there right now for patrons to vote on what our next month's book for book club is going to be. We're meeting for book club today, the 4th of October, to talk about Master and Margarita, and we'll be deciding during that meeting what we're going to be covering next month. But you do get a vote if you're a patron, so if you want to be involved in book club and also help us pick, check that out. Head to patreon.com/doofmedia.
That's right. Also, please consider giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
That's right, folks. Once again, next week is Inside Out 2. We'll see you then.
name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.